Good afternoon and early evening, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Spilling Tea. I am your host, Tiffany Daniels. And just as I have been promising over the last few days, we are now kicking off our series in regards to the cuts that are being proposed in regards to HUD. In particular, we are going to be focusing on how that is going to affect what is known as Section 8. The first thing we are going to do in this series is I'm going to go specifically over the news. And for those who want to continue and say that, but the Democrats, that much like ARC and the information I am getting in regards to Social Security and Medicaid, the organization whose information we're going to be going over today, the people who are reporting this, they are known as the National Association of Housing. They are not a partisan group, okay? I just want to cover that base. Now, we're going to go over the real brief disclaimer, and as usual, the trigger warnings. We're going to jump right into it. But first, I'm going to get into the news. Then we're going to get into what Section 8 actually is, and we're going to be doing that on this upcoming Sunday. We're going to look at how the cuts are actually going to affect the individuals who are currently on Section 8. And most importantly, we're really going to be focusing on, in particular, the changes in regards to eligibility, time limits, and the new restrictions they are putting on Section 8, and why this is a bad idea. So, let's get strapped in, folks, alright? Now, for every single one of these series that we do for this channel, all the links for all the information that we go over can always be found in the description box. So, I will be including a link in there for exactly what we're going to be reading through today, in case you want to follow along or you want to read a little bit more in depth yourself whenever you've got the time. In regards to trigger warnings, folks, we do want to mention this channel is marked not for kids for a reason. We do use profanity, and some of the topics and series that we go through on this channel deals with some very dark subjects. So if your child is 16 and younger and they are watching this channel, parental supervision is very much advised. Also, regards to politics, if you are a gung-ho MAGA, or you are a gung-ho Democrat, whatever you want to call yourself, just know that I am not on the Democrat side. I'm not on the Republican side. Whose side I am on is ARC. It's the National Association for Housing. It is on the side that is not going to rip away necessary Medicaid funding while absolutely gutting and destroying multiple programs that receive Medicaid funding that those who are looking to cut that funding know absolutely zero about. I am on the side of direct care staff, community integrators, and nursing staff who make it possible to have assisted living situation where folks who are elderly, physically, developmentally disabled, and so forth do not constantly have to endure having their hourly wages cut, the available hours that they are actually able to work cut, and being spread so thin that programs have to go back and revise criteria for those who are eligible nearly every single year to narrow it down so that the few that are left don't get entirely burnt out. And those who get to eat the costs are the individuals that the Republican Party's trying to tell you will not be losing services. So, if you are gung-ho for either side, more than likely the things I will say on this channel are going to offend you. If that cools your feet to continue with this channel, I completely understand, and it will not hurt my feelings if you stop this video right now. But I do ask that you at least still look at the description boxes on the topics that we cover on this channel to help keep yourself informed. Because whether you realize it or not, everybody is lying to you. Everybody. You hear that? People that are Democrats and Republicans, they're all lying. I just gotta call it as I've seen it. So, now that we've gotten that out of the way, we're gonna go ahead and read on this. And this came out, folks, back on May the 2nd. So, just like 2 to 3 weeks ago. This is pretty new. Alright, folks, here we go. Today, the Trump administration released their FY 2026 skinny budget proposal. Although the present budget is a political document and does not have the force of law, it does propose devastating cuts to housing and community development programs. The budget proposes the creation of a state rental assisted block grant, which would block grant funding for public housing, Section 8 tenant-based and project-based rental assistance, housing for the elderly, housing for persons with disabilities to the states, and cut these programs by an overall $26.718 billion. Folks, HUD is not swimming in the dough. They've been on a skeleton crew for over literally the last 2 decades. Their waiting lists could probably circle the globe 3 times over, and that's being exceptionally generous. They usually can only afford a skeleton crew, and even with that, there's usually a high turnover rate just due to all the stress. Okay? A cut like that can utterly obliterate HUD, particularly in red states like mine, which has the largest amount of folks who get in and need that Section 8 assistance. One of them being my aunt. My aunt is older, she's in her 60s. She is disabled. She is employed by what is known as a sheltered workshop. Sheltered workshops pay folks pennies on the dollar. It's called sub-minimum wage. What Section 8 allows her to do is it covers half of her rent. And then the other half of her rent comes from her supplemental security income, for which she receives the enormous sum, excuse my sarcasm, of $625 a month. And then cut the other half. This enables her to be able to cover things such as electricity, for example, and her groceries, things of that nature. We're not talking about people who are literally rolling in the dough here, no matter what Republicans like to tell you. Especially with the whole Trumps, you can have two dolls. Bro, you have a golden toilet in your house. Sit down. The last person on earth who should be telling anyone how to spend their money or budget is that guy. Sorry, not sorry. Let me go ahead and continue here. If cuts, like what they're saying here, go through, there is the possibility that someone like my aunt could lose that Section 8 housing. Whether that happens now or the so-called 2 years from now is irrelevant. Either way, it's going to be devastating to someone who is just now, with the additional help, getting to a place where they can actually be comfortable. But let me go ahead and continue on here. And we'll get into Section 8 and the type of housing that it covers and why this is a far bigger issue than most people realize as we go throughout the series here. The budget would also institute a 2-year gap on rental assistance for able-bodied adults. Now everyone's, well, that's perfectly reasonable. Why would you be against that? You just like people who mooch. Let me ask you a question there, Cletus. Who decides and who gets to determine who is considered able-bodied adults? Who's going to come up with the criteria that they are going to use to determine who they consider able-bodied adults and who they don't? How is that restriction going to be enforced? Who's going to be enforcing it? Is it going to be a group of doctors that agree together on what should be considered able-bodied adults? Are the individuals who are going to be covering what they think that looks like going to be taking in as advisement that not everybody's disabilities is visible for the whole world to see? You know, like me, like my aunt. Not all of us have diagnoses that you can just automatically know what it is with the naked eye. Right? So who gets to make that determination? Is there going to be a set criteria in regards to who they are going to consider able-bodied adults? Does the general public whose taxes fund this program get a say in regards to who is going to be considered able-bodied adults? You gotta start asking questions and stop taking political jargon at face value, because it sounds all nice, but in my experience, folks, it never is. You have to ask these questions, okay? Let me go ahead and continue on here. NARU firmly opposes the scope of these cuts and block granting rental assistance to states. These cuts would have a devastating impact on millions of families across the country, and block granting funding would make it easier for Congress to cut rental assistance in the future. The budget also proposes eliminating home investment partnerships, or HOME, and community development block grant, CDBG programs, which provide critical resources to communities across the country. Eliminating these programs would make it more difficult for communities to provide needed services and increase the supply of affordable housing. People are hurting right now, folks. the need for affordable housing due to the Russian roulette model currently being used by our current administration in regards to tariffs in the economy right now, that number is only going to continue to steadily rise. Cutting into programs like this is going to increase homelessness, not make the situation better. Okay? Let me go again and continue. Further, the budget would consolidate the Continuum of Care COC program and housing opportunities for persons with AIDS, HOPWA, into a more targeted emergency solutions grant ESG program. Funding for individuals would be capped at 2 years. Again, these are individuals who literally know nothing about healthcare or people with disabilities or how those disabilities affect them, not just in our day-to-day lives, but in regards to finances, budgeting, housing, affordable food, affordable transportation, affordable medical care. They don't think about that because it doesn't affect them, and therefore they think it doesn't affect the majority of everyone else. Where the fact of the matter is, it affects red states way more than it does blue states. We tend to have larger brackets of individuals who need that additional help, who need to have access to more affordable housing than you would be dealing with on either side of the coasts. That is just a fact. It has been a fact for years. At the very least, definitely from the last 2 decades. But let me go again and continue on here. Public housing agencies, PHAs, are vital to communities nationwide, effectively managing resources to support valuable residents and uphold local accountability. They reduce homelessness, stabilize families, create jobs, and lead community development that enhances neighborhood safety and livability. By providing direct rental assistance, PHAs enable low to middle income families to afford housing near their workplaces, driving positive economic outcomes in communities of all sizes. The proposals in the president's budget would have devastating impacts on communities across the country. Now, you may be saying, but Tiff, this is just suggestions. None of this has been actually done yet. Fair enough. But have you seen, literally, any of the GOP? Any of the GOP at all outside of Rand Paul and Ron Paul actually do anything to oppose Trump? Even on some of the stupidest crap? Have you? Have you ever seen him make a suggestion or push forth an idea and not have those spineless cowards saying, "Yes, sir, how high should we jump, sir"? Really, really think about your answer to that question. Okay? Now, granted, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that Democrats are any better. They are just as bad in regards to walking in lockstep and giving themselves over into groupthink as the Republicans are. But right now, the Democrats are not the ones in power, the GOP is. We have to deal with these moments as they come. So right now, have you seen legitimately anybody inside the GOP who's going to be voting on funding for exactly things like this with Section 8 ever actually oppose Trump in any real meaningful way? That's what I thought. That's why though it's only a suggestion right now, you need to be reading this and you should be deeply concerned. And yes, you should be talking to your representatives and not just assuming they're going to make everything all right. All right? Okay. Let us go again and continue to read on here. Proposed cuts to programs. Tenant-based rental assistance, public housing, project-based rental assistance, housing for the elderly, and housing for persons with disabilities. Now, regards to this is mainly Section 8. So, this is going to be directly affecting places like Crowhaven. That is the former assisted living apartment that I resided in, coming straight out of high school for that first 6 years, where I got in on the Section 8 voucher and they covered up to half of my rent, because at the time I was on supplemental security income, and if I did not help, I would have drowned. Okay? Most of the individuals that are still inside that assisted living apartment facility right now are all currently under Section 8 housing vouchers. The same is over at the apartments I've told you about in regards to the Sassafras residents. They are also in that program under Section 8, which help provide funding to cover things such as rent and maintenance of the apartments in the area, things of that nature, as well as the Medicaid that covers pretty much everything else. So people like that in those type of places are literally about to get boned from every single angle. And no, I do not mean that in a fun way. Alright? It's not looking good. It's looking bleaker by the day. Bleaker by the day. Oh my God. But not just that though. So, right across from my lovely place here is the Cold Lancelot building. Now that is an elderly assisted living facility. Individuals over there use things such as Oxford Care to assist in the day-to-day medical needs for those who are a little bit older over there. Most of these folks are retired. They're disabled. Some of them are pretty medically fragile. And they are also in there to cover some of the cost of rent and, again, maintenance through Section 8 vouchers. And Lancelot is by far not the only facility like that out here in the city. There's also Elfingdale, that's down more on the north side. Oh no, that's south side, north side, sorry. And we've got a few other places like it as well. So it's not looking good, folks. It's not looking good at all. And remember, we're also talking about a GOP who wants to raise the retirement age. That's why it's going to be important to determine who is going to be judging exactly who's considered able-bodied adults. Very pertinent information considering, don't you think? Just saying. Let me continue. 26.718 billion, a 43% cut. Remainder of funds to be combined and block granted to states with a 2-year cap on assistance for able-bodied adults. The budget does include $25 million specifically allocated in housing grants for youth aging out of foster care. That is not covering our developmentally disabled folks. That's not covering individuals like myself going through transition age services, going from high school into the workforce or secondary education, who would be going into assisted living places such as Crowhaven or out here there's a new one. Yeah, the Frisco building, sorry. Pretty much those are the two right there. They use Section 8 vouchers. There's Frisco building, there's Sassafras, there's Crowhaven out in the Nixa area that all heavily rely on Section 8 funding. Most of these programs, often seen over by a case manager, usually you gotta be in there longer than 2 years. Just saying. So yeah, who's gonna be judging who's considered able-bodied? Alright, for the CDBG, $3.3 billion, eliminating the program entirely. Home Investment Partnerships Program, $1.25 billion, eliminating the program entirely. Homeless Assistance Program consolidations, $532 million, a 12% cut. ESG, HOPWA, and COC grants would be combined into one program, because that always ends well. Part of the problem with Medicaid is you've got one program that is stretched very thinly, covering a whole different variety of different programs that the majority of the public knows absolutely nothing about. But we all want to put it under one thing, and we're just going to keep cutting it until what? It no longer exists. Sorry, folks, but the writing's on the wall, and I can read it as clear as day. Let me continue. Self-sufficiency programs, $196 million, eliminating FSS, Jobs Plus, and ROS. Those are programs that assist in helping finding folks community-based employment. Considering these are individuals who want to put in their work requirements, they do also seem to have this backhanded way of hitting us again by then removing funding for the very programs that would assist us in helping us meet said work requirement. Cute, isn't it? Alright, call to action. Congress ultimately decides fiscal year 2026 funding. The budget proposal is just beginning of a long appropriations process. Now is the time to contact your members of Congress and share how these harmful cuts will impact your community. So, you're going to see their action center. This is going to be linked right there in the description box, so please jump on the link, click in these areas, get a hold of your folks that are in the Senate and Congress, because folks, I hate to put it this bleakly, but I'm not being an alarmist here. I'm telling you what I know as an individual who's been within the service system, but has also worked in the service system by working for the Missouri Department of Mental Health, Division of Developmental Disabilities, to be extremely specific, out of the Southwest region. I can't paint it as bleak as it actually is. You cannot just allow your minds to be eased by Republicans telling you nothing's going to happen. It very much is. And when they say things such as, well, if you're able-bodied, then we'll put a cap on it and things like that, and that eases your mind, it really shouldn't. That should scare the hell out of you. Because in the back of your head, what you need to always keep in mind, especially as we continue to go on this downward spiral with a madman, is who gets to decide who's able-bodied and who's not. That should be of deep concern to you, because what you think would be the individuals considered able-bodied is probably not what the government's going to tell you it is. And we're going to go ahead and close on that one, folks. We don't get very many views on this channel, and the few we do tend to get removed from time to time. So if you could, please don't forget to hit the like button, hit subscribe. Please don't forget to hit the comments. I do appreciate your time, and as always, folks, we here at Spilling Tea absolutely do. Hope you have a good one. I will see you all tomorrow, and from now on, Mondays through Wednesdays will be as I continue to put out more JRC videos and doing pre-recordings. Thursdays are going to be for the history of the anti-vax movement. Fridays is going to be for our series in regards to supplemental security income and Social Security and the threats we are looking at there. Saturday is going to be a continuation of our Medicaid series, and on Sundays we're going to start dealing with what we are looking at in regards to threats that have to do with HUD, in particular with Section 8 housing. So please stay tuned, folks. Don't forget to hit that alert bell. That way you can catch these videos just as soon as they come out. Again, folks, I do hope you have a good one. Happy Sunday. I will see you all tomorrow. Bye-bye, everyone.